And we're back with Season 2, Episode 21, Dragon Quest. The episode in which Spike goes north to migrate with the dragons to find out who he really is, and in so doing, discovers who he really is. This episode's interesting. It's actually better than I remember on repeat viewing, which I think that's actually the first time that's happened as we've been going through the MLP series specifically. There's some good stuff here. There's also some loud music. There we go. That's a little better. Put that down a bit so I can stop screaming at the top of my lungs. Hey! There we go. Okay, so, as I was saying, better than I remember. Whoops, that's the wrong notes. These are the notes I want. There we go. I've got all kinds of notes here. This episode was done by Meriwether Williams, which is the person who did Hearthwarming Eve, an episode I liked, Mysterious Mirror Do Well, an episode I liked, and Putting Her Hoof Down, an episode that was okay. It was pretty good. Alright, I guess. Was I the only one? I should pull the chat over here while we're doing these. Was I the only one who noticed that the animation was, like, weirdly good this episode? Like, is that just me? Of course, it appears we're not actually alive yet. Poke chat. Poke. Wake up, wake up. The whole point of a streamination is to be alive. Wake up! Poke. Of course not Shikor. Why would you watch the episode? Hang on, I need to stab Shikor. Where's my stabinator? I mean, I could use Frostmourne. Do you want me to stab you with Frostmourne? I mean, I'm okay with that. Here, I'll just grab it here. There we go. There we go. Alright, so. Listen, Shikor, I want you to stand really still. This is going to hurt for a couple seconds. Oh no, MLP animation is good, but it's actually strange because every now and again there's an episode where the animation is noticeably better. Smoother, and I'm trying to think how to describe it because I don't actually know the technical words. Because they use Flash, right? They use Flash animation. But what they do is occasionally they will do like a morph between one model and another model, and it will seamlessly give things like... It basically allows for them to be better animated, like more motion and more, you know... more angles that they can use, different poses that they wouldn't otherwise be able to use, you know, stuff like that. Anyways... It was good, and then occasionally I notice an episode that's just really well done, and this was just one of them. That's what I just wanted to comment on. Moving on. Interesting, Raskor. I guess we'll see when we get there. But moving on. So, they go into the trench. They all have their little outfits. I wonder if those were a doll, because, you know, this is supposed to sell toys, right? And Rainbow makes fun of Spike. Poor Spike. Which leads to Rarity thinking that Spike is adorable. For a second I thought we were going to have to bring up another Rarity crush, but it doesn't actually rear its ugly head in this episode. Instead it's just, he's so adorable, which I have to admit would probably be a little bit humiliating in its own right. But what amuses me most is as he's waddling, oh, isn't he so cute when he waddles away? Waddle! Yeah! You know, that was good. That was good. I want you to remember that whole little mockery session, though. Just keep that in mind, because I'm going to round back to that later. So he's like, I must learn who I really am. And he decides to head off. Did you notice he has the blanket that Applejack gave him? When he sets up the picnic? It's probably just a use of, you know, a reuse of assets, but I thought it was interesting that they bothered to do that. Anywho, so, he heads off. There's phoenixes during the montage, of course. I suppose this is a good time to talk about one of the first things I do like about this episode. This isn't really running away in the strictest sense of the word, but it kinda is at the same time. And I've talked about this topic before. I suppose I should put away Frostmourne. You gonna be good, Shikor? So, I think I've mentioned this before. Even my own niece once tried to run away at one point. And it's a thing that happens Like, it is. It's a thing that some kids just go through. I actually did that too, myself. God, that would have been 3rd grade, I think, for me. I know most kids have a runaway thing. The catch is, of course, there's variances between actually running away and just, going down the street or hanging out at your friend's house or whatever. But I bring that up because one of the most universally best responses to that I've ever seen is to either not allow it at all or to follow them immediately. When my niece tried to run away, I stood at the door and just stood there, and she's like, well, I don't want to be around you right now. And I'm like, that's okay. You don't have to be around me right now. But it is too dangerous out there, and I cannot allow you to go out alone. She's like, well, okay. I'm going to be up in my room then. I was like, okay. You know where to find me if you need me. And then what I did was I got in hearing shot of her room to make sure that she was okay, but still gave her that space, because that's kind of important. How many of you, as an adult, have difficulty containing yourself when you're especially upset or angry? I think I've mentioned before, containing my temper is something I've worked on for my entire life, and is something that I have literally studied when it comes to psychology and physiology. So a child generally doesn't have that ability yet because they haven't learned that yet. So giving them that space tends to be kind of a good thing generally, so that they can try and cope and calm down and deal with it. The thing is, though, and this is always the catch, you don't want to leave them completely alone. And that's actually why I'm bringing this up, because as weird as this may sound, I really like the fact... lol, Ventures. I really like the fact that they follow him, because that was exactly the correct decision. Not just because the help they gave him in the end, but because as caretakers, as what are effectively parents, what they needed to do was follow him to make sure that he was safe. Discreetly, give him distance, give him space, but you need to be that safety net, right? And that's something I believe very firmly in. You got this, it's okay. If things get actually bad, we're here to take care of it. And that's actually what happened. Things got actually bad, and they were there to take care of him. So, as bad as MLP ever gets anyways. Obviously, that's nothing compared to real life, but, whatever. So, I'll talk about that in a second, Baron. Don't let me forget, though. So, I just liked that. I liked the fact that they followed him and gave him the space. So then they get there, and then we see the dragons. Now, here's the thing. I guess we'll just cover this now, because Baron just brought this up. Do dragons have a culture? So we'll see in the future that dragons do actually have a form of a culture, but it's not really what we would normally call a culture. It still qualifies, but it's not what you think of when you think of a culture. It's more like a culture of individuals or a culture of cliques, because for the most part, dragons form little cliques, and that's it. And we'll be seeing that going forward as well. Some of them will respond and behave in certain ways, but for the most part, they all just kind of do their own things, depending on which particular group they are a part of. I can't remember her name, but the dragon chick who ends up taking over as the dragons, I can't think of her name. I was going to say Dragon Lady, but then that sounded weird in my head, so I changed it to Chick. And that sounds even weirder. Dragon Woman? No. Ember, that's her name, thank you. Dragon Lord Ember. She also offers a bit of an insight into their culture as well, which we'll get into much, much later. But what I do know right now is that what we are seeing here is not actually all of dragon culture, but rather one dragon clique. A bunch of college bullies. Well, college is being exaggerative. Actually, to be completely blunt, what I saw of these guys is more high school range. Obviously, college could qualify as well, but yeah, teenagers. How many of you could basically identify from memory at least one person you've interacted with, in that schooling range, that was each one of those people? Because I could. Probably my favorite particular thing, because this never made sense to me even as a kid, and I used to make fun of them for it, is they'll pick out the stupidest things and laugh for what is effectively no reason. You're wearing shoes. Kind of lame-o wears shoes. Anyways. You're eating carrots. What's wrong? You're a bunny? Like, they have the dumbest possible insults, right? And that's exactly what they did in the episode, so there's that. I can't remember. I'm trying to remember some of them. They came up with some really dumb ones in the episode. You like Pokemon. Oh no, worse than that. Stupider than that. Anyways, so they're really dumb, and they're really obvious, and they're really teenagers. I have a question. Do you think they're actually that stupid, or is it just a joke? You'll notice that they completely don't notice the pony trio there, despite it being ridiculously obvious that they're not a dragon. Yes, I know, they're Craggle's cousin or whatever, but still. I mention it because I'm with Act. I actually think that they are that dumb. I think that is legitimately a problem because, well, that's the way they're portrayed in general. Now, I have heard an argument that this episode is designed for younger girls, specifically, to kind of distance them from younger boys. I don't actually agree with that. I want to loop back to that. The only reason I even mentioned it is someone mentioned it in chat just now, but I want to loop back to that because I don't think that's what this is about. We'll get back there. It is, however, worth noting that one of the more common insults that tends to be flung at people, regardless of gender, is, haha, you're into insert thing that isn't typical. Right? Like, oh, I don't know, My Little Pony. Anyways, so they're really, really dumb. Spike belches. I've been wondering this for a while. This is as good a time as I need to bring it up. Why exactly does his fire breath come up with the letters from Celestia? Do they ever answer that? They have not, to my knowledge, answered that question. I mean, it could be a specific enchantment or a specific connection or a specific spell or whatever, but to my knowledge, it's never been answered. So it's just interesting. Especially since he's the only one that does that. We also don't find out anything about Spike's past in this episode, which is fine, because that's not the point. I'll circle back to that. Anyway, so they have a giant pile of gems. My first thought, do you think they dragged those gems there? Or do you think they were just there in the Dragon Crag area, which is apparently northern Utah? I'm sorry, dumb joke. Yeah, me too, Shiko. They never answer. It's just a letter, and it's like, it's gone. Celestia shows up at the end of the episode. Where have you been? Well, I mentioned the gem pile, though, because I actually had an alternate idea. You'll notice that at several points they make a point of showcasing that the adult dragons are not only there, but paying attention. You caught that, right? Oh, sure, they're not getting involved. In fact, they have 0 lines of dialogue. But every now and again, they just kind of they just kind of check up on them. I like to think that the adult dragons literally dragged the gem pile there for the kids. Because parents, right? Now, you could say what they're doing is basically negligent parenthood, and that is an arguable point, but you'll notice they're effectively doing the same thing that the ponies are, giving them the freedom to do what they want, while being back here just in case things go bad. And of course, that is kind of lining up with dragon culture from the tiny slice of it that we see here, that they aren't as involved as ponies would be. Could be Dream Whisperer, I don't know. Unfortunately, we don't know much about the specifics of why they breathe fire. That'll be something to think about in the future, since that's going to come up again. Yeah, at least they have a culture, unlike the Diamond Dogs, who... Anyways. So... I find it interesting how durable Spike actually is. Which makes sense. He's a freaking dragon. And it's come up before, multiple times, actually, in previous episodes. Usually just for a one-off gag. This is the first time his durability has actually had any relevance. he literally goes swimming through lava, and he's fine. Why not? He's a dragon. I mean, yes, there is some degrees to which that is stupid. I mean, no matter how hard his scales is, he probably shouldn't, his eyes should probably be shut while he's in a lava pool. But it does still get across the point that he has a high durability overall, and to my knowledge, I believe that thing will actually be coming up in the future as well. Moving on. I do want to mention one other thing really quick. So they go on their raid. You'll notice Rainbow is the one who's really eager to help them out, right? He's like, oh god, we gotta go help Spike. I only want to point that out because of two things. First, and most obviously, Rainbow, loyalty. Obviously, she will make fun. She was the one who initiated all this by mocking him, and she probably feels guilty for it, in all honesty. But this is an actual problem. Like, that was just nothing. As I've said many times, you can tell someone's more true character when things are real. And this is more real, and Rainbow's right there getting his back. In fact, she's so eager to do so, she nearly shoves them into a lava pit. But that brings me to my second point. The episode shows mocking twice. Once by the ponies and once by the dragons. But this showcases the difference and variance between the two. And this is an incredibly important lesson that I think several adults should learn. And that is the lesson that just because I'm making fun of you doesn't mean I'm making fun of you. Now, I know that sounds weird, but I imagine a lot of you just immediately got what I was talking about, right? How many of you have friends who take the piss out on you, right? Or like, oh yeah, you're dumb or you're stupid. I can't emulate it because I'm really bad at it. Right? There's nothing really wrong with that because they don't mean it. Because, yeah, it's just teasing, because they're friends, because it's banter. And I like the fact that they show that Rainbow, who was the initiator of the earlier teasing, is the one who's got his back the strongest. To contrast and yeah, you're right, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, we're just going to keep connecting Grand Theft Auto and MLP. It showed exactly this with several of the friends, especially in the early and late sections of the game. It's just BSing, right? And yeah, military. Let's not even get into how military does it. So my point is there is a huge gap of difference between, bantering and actually mocking. And I like that they showcase that, not by saying it, but by showing the difference in the mentality. That's good. That's a good lesson. And I really, really enjoy that. Like I said, this episode was better than I thought upon repeat viewing because of little things like this. Which brings me to, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. The references. I decided to do a little digging into this, apparently on the side. On the side, period. Next sentence. Apparently, several of the people involved were deliberately making references to Square Enix in this one. Obviously, the name of the episode is duh. It's literally called Dragon Quest. But the styling of the baby phoenix was specifically designed to look like a chocobo. But my personal favorite reference is one that I caught immediately, and probably just because I'm a total geek. You see, there's this bit where the parent phoenix goes and does this massive blinding attack, which causes the dragons to fly into a tree. That attack is almost one-to-one the Phoenix summon from Final Fantasy VII, aka the most popular Final Fantasy that most people are probably going to be able to recognize on sight. Seriously, pull it up sometime. Watch the Phoenix summon from FF7, or just remember it right now. It's almost one-to-one. There's no way that was accidental. And you're probably thinking, Lore, how would you know that so immediately? Well, I'm the guy who did Final Combo plus Phoenix all the time, so... Anyways. I just wanted to comment on the references really quick. Let's move on. So, some antics happen. You notice there's this bit. There's this bit where he says, oh, we'll just take the hatchlings, of course. Which, I have to admit, they immediately go with slapstick. And my first thought was, wait, why is that being portrayed as slapstick? But then I immediately answered my own question because kidnapping children's kind of horrible. So, they never actually address what they were going to do with them. Like, if you caught that. Obviously, they wanted to smash the egg, but why were they going to take the hatchlings? Anyway, so the hatchlings just completely own them because they're phoenixes and they're better than them. And yeah, the phoenix is strong enough to burn dragons that breathe in lava. That's actually another good point to mention there. A very valuable point as well. Anywho, so they want him to smash the egg. That's also an important thing to showcase. Because I mentioned earlier the wrong crowd. I think I mentioned that. I meant to mention that. There is the words hanging with the wrong crowd is a little bit overused. You know, oh, we don't hang out with those people because they have the wrong gender, or the wrong race, or the wrong skin color, the wrong political affiliation, whatever another stupid thing. But the problem is there is a legitimate concept of the wrong crowd. People who are actually bad influences and the kind of people you do actually want to avoid. These guys are a good example of that. Now, yeah, Spike, I'll actually bring up the baby phoenix thing, because it's going to come up briefly in a future episode. I remember it, too, because I was like, oh, we'll get back to that. Anywho, so, first of all, showing the difference and disparity, once again, between, you know, just being boys, or just being teenagers, or whatever, and actual bullying was an important distinction that needed to be placed. They needed to show that they wanted to push Spike over the line. And of course, Spike doesn't, because peer pressure is another extremely dangerous thing in all of human society, regardless of age or group. I mean, I'm not even going to mention the fact that there is a epidemic going on right now, pandemic, excuse me, that has caused a lot of peer pressure problems right now in real life. Let's ignore the real life implications. Peer pressure is a huge issue, especially for kids. So, yeah, he says no, and then they jump out to defend him because, again, you know, they've got this. I love Rarity's bit. Normally, I'm not into fighting, I'm more into fashion, but I'll rip you to pieces if you touch one little scale on his head. I really liked that. That was awesome. And then they bail. That is yet another good lesson in this episode. I think we're up to 3, and there's a 4th one coming. Often in fiction and in popular society, avoiding conflict is portrayed as cowardly or bad, you know, a negative thing. But that is not true. In fact, it is a very good lesson to learn that it's okay to run. Either run for help or just run in general to avoid the conflict in its entirety. Now, obviously, you know, there's a degree of mentality that goes into when you need to run. I mean, I hate to quote this yet again, but it just keeps being true. There is a time to hold, a time to fold, a time to walk, and a time to run. And the whole reason I keep using that quote endlessly is not because I like the song, because I actually don't like the song. It's because of the fact that it is so applicable. What it means is using your brain to apply correctly for the circumstance. That's what that really just means. And yeah, when you're fighting a group of dragons, that's a good time to run. Yes, Act, I would agree with that completely. So they run. Now, I want to stab Shadow Machine. So I'm going to grab this, my Swiffer here, because I don't feel like picking up Frostmourne again. No, thank you very, very much, Shadow Machine. Very much obliged and appreciate. As always, thank you, sir. It's a re-notification. I hate you. Stabbing. Okay, we're walking. No, I do want to mention something before we get to my final point. Do you think this qualifies as a wah-wah? Because the tone of it doesn't, but they do literally play the wah-wah. There is actually the physical sound. So it's kind of a judgment call. What do you guys think? Just double checking some. Okay. Just swiffing my desk a little bit while I'm thinking about it. I just do this semi-regularly, a couple times a week. Make sure to keep all the dust away. Gotta get them things, gotta get the webcam. There we go. There we go. Well, I'd tell you, Aethel, but then I'd have to kill you. Yeah, so the books being knocked off the shelves, that's another one we gotta judge, because the books were carefully removed from the shelves during a research session. So does that actually qualify? I'm leaning towards no on the wah-wah thing, because it violates the spirit of the wah-wah. Again, it wasn't tonally one. And yeah, it's for the exact same reason I don't think it counts for the books being knocked off the shelves. Besides, that's going to happen in the future, I'm pretty sure. Well, that's... Oh, that's Ponyville damaged. Oh yeah, actually, sorry, I have 2 continuity counters. I forgot to mention that. One for the Applejack thing, and one for the photos at the end. Where's the counters? There they are. Which showcase several scenes from previous episodes. Along with that, what are these things? Oh yeah, that's that. I still have these, apparently. And here's Ponyville Genetics, or Pony Genetics, excuse me. Still very intelligent. Nah, it's not that surprising. And the next episode's all about that Imperial Star Destroyer. Speaking of which, that's a fair point, Raskor. You know what? That's a fair point. I wasn't even considering that one. That is a valid continuity counter. Boop. So let's get to the 4th lesson. Now, I feel like this is applicable at all points in history, but it certainly seems to be coming up a lot over the last, 10 years or so. The final point is, and I'm just going to summarize this as bluntly as I can, there's no shame in being who you really are. Spike is embarrassed about being a pony. Oh, I know he's a dragon, but culturally speaking, he is a pony. He is raised as one. He acts like one. He behaves like one. So he is, in terms of mentality, a pony. So then he goes on this big quest and finds out what it's like to be a dragon and decides that he would rather be himself. Now, obviously there's a lot of asterisks that attach to this one, but Spike's overall acceptance of himself, rather than being embarrassed or ashamed of what he is basically the major point of the episode, in my opinion. And again, is a good lesson to be learned. Equestrian. I like that act. Equestrian. We'll call him that. Because again, it's a cultural thing. He is culturally of Equestria. He is very connected to that society and that culture and the way those people function and all, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, this will actually set up some things with the dragons going forward with regards to improving dragon people and being better dragons and blah, 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 blah. So this is going to lay some seeds, again, for future continuity. But I feel like this is such an applicable lesson, again, even for adults. I keep saying that. It's a good lesson for kids, obviously, but it is also a good lesson for adults. Because there's nothing wrong... I'm trying to think of how to phrase this. Like, there's nothing really wrong with just saying, I am someone who likes such and such. Now, obviously, there's limits on this. There are... I'm a Nazi! No, you should probably be ashamed of that. Or... I put babies on spikes because you're Eddie Izzard, apparently. Now, there are limits, but there's nothing wrong with being someone who is a geek, to name one that's probably applicable to several people watching this, including me. There's nothing wrong with being into My Little Pony, which comes up again. There's nothing wrong with identifying as something that you're not biologically, and there's nothing wrong with culturally being something that you're not in terms of birth or lineage. Like, I'm trying to dance around this a little bit, but my point is this applies so universally that it's hard for me to say this without just blanket statementing, you know what I mean? That would be 2 up. Yep, my great-grandfather is someone who was born in Lebanon, and he never really considered himself Lebanese culturally, mentally, in terms of his his tone and his approach. He ended up actually jumping across Europe and then finally ending up in the States. And at the end of his, towards the latter end of his life, I only know bits and pieces because history. Towards the latter end of his life, he fully identified as an American. Now, I know that's a weird thing to bring up, but my point being that he was actually disowned by his family for identifying as an American rather than a Lebanese person. Just another, everyday real life method by which this is applicable. Because, and I only have vague information to go off of, but from what I understand, he was an American, regardless of where he was born, Food for thought. So yeah, as Act mentions, this episode went up, in my opinion, a lot more than I thought it would. I'm actually legitimately surprised by that. Which is good, because the next episode, actually, like, the next 5 episodes are all good ones by memory, so we're just kind of nailing it for the last thing. I am going to go ahead and chop off the local recording.